good morning and hey now, PASW staff, clients, friends joining us. Welcome to Tuesday's class. We had almost too much fun looking at Phantom Thread yesterday, Paul Thomas Anderson film, where you're going to give me an intimate sounding score, something very touching and quiet for that scene. So it's going to be good. So get that into me by today. We'll see the results for Friday. Let's just get right to work. We got to dive in deep to somebody who's important to talk about. Somebody who was coined the bad boy of music, which coincidentally is what they call me too. But in my 20s maybe. But I'm just teasing. But he was called the bad boy of music. He did a lot of things that were scandalous, but most importantly, some beautiful music that was highly melodic. Even though he's an ultra modern composer in the 20s, that's mostly that was where he was writing most of his bad boyish music. But let's dive into the music of George Antheil. George Antheil was an American avant-garde composer, pianist, author, inventor. He used modern sounds, musical, industrial, and mechanical sounds that we're going to listen to later, and one of the earliest modern composers of the 20th century, and was always reinventing himself, reimagining his skills. He wrote magazine articles, an autobiography, which is considered really terrific, although more fact than fiction. But I mean, how can you blame him? We all want to make our lives seem and look a little bit better than they are. He wrote mystery novels and a newspaper and music columns, and was a real iconoclastic person. So let's go to Trenton, New Jersey. We need to get our map over there, and this is where he's born. So he's born in 1900. I'm really happy about this because 1900 makes it really easy to know how old he was when certain things happened. So I like that year a lot. And he dies in 1959, so it's tricky because he dies when he's 58, so it doesn't always work in that favor. But so he dies at 58 of a heart attack in New York City. But yes, 1900, early life, raised bilingual, writing music, poetry, prose at a really young age. Never graduated high school, flunked out of Trenton Central High, but started playing piano at age 6 at a young age, and then received formal composition and training in the European tradition style of composition. After receiving formal education, he also was exposed to conceptual art and Dadaism. Dadaism is a big thing that happened in the early 20th century with artists that rejected logic, reason. They were kind of anti-everything. They were kind of like anarchists, only with art, sort of. At the age of 21, Antheil goes to Europe. In Europe, he is out to make his name as an ultra new modern composer. And he's really influenced by Stravinsky's music, and they had some encounters together. I think they made up in the 40s as friends, but I think Antheil was very overconfident, self-assured, and a very budding genius, and wanted people to know that about him. In Berlin, he achieves a little bit notoriety, but he'd many times have to pay to play his music and pay to have concerts of his music performed. Sometimes you just need to use your own money, and what's the point of having money if you need to self-promote yourself? That's okay too. Marcel Proust, my favorite writer, funded all of Remembrance of Things Past out of his own money. So it's not always the worst thing in the world to do. He marries in 1925, and then he goes to Paris. I mean, if you want to talk about things happening Paris in the 20s, that's where everybody was, even Americans. Everybody was, I mean, if you look at the movie Midnight in Paris is actually a really good example of all the great art. And Paris is the center of ideas coming out that the whole world takes notice. And here, Antheil meets Eric Satie. We did a class on him. Ezra Pound, James Joyce, Virgil Thompson, Ernest Hemingway. These guys are all hanging out in cafes, talking about art, talking about new ideas, progressive ideas. And the first piece we're going to look at is George Antheil's Ballet Mécanique. Sorry about my French. It's not, I'm not French, in case you didn't know. But Ballet Mécanique was originally scored for 16 synchronized piano players, 2 grand pianos, electric bells, xylophones, bass drums, a siren, and 3 airplane propellers. He wanted airplane propellers, and he was going to get them. It was so difficult to pull off. It wasn't really pulled off. He mostly wanted to create a riot in Paris. Ballet Mécanique was a film score and also a ballet, and this was this whole collaboration of. It was scored for countless numbers of player pianos. I mean, I think it's great I think it's very cool to listen to for a few minutes. It's all percussive. He's using the piano to bang as a percussive instrument, which actually the piano is a percussive instrument because you push to get the sound out, and anything you use your hand or finger to is a percussion instrument. So if you're ever wondering, which I know you have been wanting to ask me, is piano a percussion instrument? Yes, it is. He'd put a revolver on top of the piano during some of his concerts. I mean, he was out of his mind, but that's okay. I mean, most of the people we talk about are out of their minds, right? 1927, he writes my favorite piece. Something that I love, a jazz symphony. And this is after Europe. He comes back to New York and Carnegie Hall to present an entire concert devoted to his works. And then also with this jazz symphony, engaged a black orchestra to premiere this. So had all black musicians perform this. Listen to the opening. This sounds so Spanish, Mexican style to me, and like mariachi almost. Take a listen. When I first heard it in college, I didn't know his music growing up until college, and I love that opening. It's this jazz symphony's it's this is 1927. This is really early. Jazz is not becoming, we of course we've talked about Dixieland. We have in the early 20th century we have Rhapsody in Blue in 1924. That's a great example of romantic classical music with jazz overtones, undertones, all of that kind of stuff. 30s, Duke Ellington's going around, but he's doing this jazz symphony in the late 20s, which is really early, and it sounds like no other music. My favorite part is the Parisian waltz that happens at the end. It's beautiful. So you're hearing a massive soundscape, but it's got this. I don't know. I'm always a sucker for these kind of carnival sounding waltzes. I just think the orchestration is brilliant. I love the melody. When I first listened to some of his music, it was like, okay, this might be more interesting to think about than to actually listen to. But the more I listened to his music, and particularly with the jazz symphony, the harder it is to deny that there's a great melodic composer underneath, and he found that out actually. By 1939, he abandons this avant-garde style of music, more for romantic and classical music. And then in 1936, he goes to Hollywood. This is where a lot of composers would go, because a lot of them, the work was out there for film scores, as we know. He became a sought-after composer, writing more than 30 scores for Cecil B. DeMille, which we looked at, who did the Ten Commandments, and Nicholas Ray and other very famous directors. I don't know how happy he was writing these scores. As a film composer, it's tough because you're a slave to the picture, a slave to the director, a slave to the script. It's hard to get a lot of freedom here. So in 1942, he meets Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr is one of the most famous, beautiful actresses at that time. Beautiful and brilliant. She was just, we could spend hours talking about her. But the two of them are into talking about torpedoes, and they are co-inventors with this frequency hopping spread spectrum, which was a method of transmitting radio signals by rapidly changing the carrier frequency. So this would help throw the enemies off track, and the changes were controlled by a code known both to the transmitter and the receiver, and it's to avoid interference and prevent eavesdropping on the other end, eavesdropping of the Nazis. They came up with this and invented this thing. I don't know how. It's completely crazy. So they received a patent, though, the two of them, for this. So that's a little history on the bad boy right composer, George Antheil. He truly had a gift for melody, and also for being semi-futuristic and modern sounding, which is good. You need to take what's gone before you, reinvent it, and make it accessible somehow. You don't need to, but I think that's partly some of the key to some of the success in life. So hope you enjoyed George Antheil. Great composer, thinker. And tomorrow we're going to be doing something terrific. I don't know yet. I have no idea what we're going to be doing. No, I do, but I'll just leave you with a cliffhanger of that. Okay, love you, miss you. Said it all. We need to stop now. Okay, see you tomorrow.